One of the biggest questions I think that both PlayStation and Xbox fans have ever since we learned about the news that Insomniac Games has been purchased by Sony and is now a first-party studio under them is what they're going to be working on going into the future. Now, obviously, we know that Sony's going to want Insomniac, and Insomniac's going to want to themselves as well, to continue to pursue the success that they've had with the most recent Spider-Man game. We just learned that they have sold 13.2 million copies of Spider-Man, and that's actually a sold through number. So that's how many people have actually went out and bought the game or downloaded it digitally, which is insanely impressive. That actually sits just behind Uncharted 4 as the second best-selling exclusive game for the PlayStation 4 so far, and I actually think, especially because there's rumors that there's going to be a Game of the Year edition for Spider-Man coming out, I think it's going to end up surpassing Uncharted 4 and become the best-selling PS4 exclusive of all time as we go further. But the big question is, what else is Insomniac going to do? We know they're going to be doing Spider-Man. Are they going to be doing anything more with Ratchet and Clank or the Resistance series or Sunset Overdrive, now that we know that Sony is the owner of the Sunset Overdrive IP? Well, we do have a little bit of information that comes from Shawn Layden, and I'm going to go over it here. It says that when talking about the absorption of Spider-Man developer Insomniac Games into Sony's worldwide studios, one question that has seemingly come to the forefront of the conversation is just what will the platform holder do with the Sunset Overdrive IP? Well, not a whole lot if Shawn Layden's comments to news site Hollywood Reporter are to be believed. Speaking to the outlet, Layden admitted that the Sunset Overdrive IP, while exciting for its time, is not something that the platform holder is prioritizing right now. The reason being that he feels Sony should focus on developing previously PlayStation-friendly IPs such as Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man for the PS4's swelling user base and beyond. So, Hollywood Reporter asked the question, what does this acquisition mean for a series like Sunset Overdrive, which was a Microsoft exclusive? And Shawn Layden says, that was a great experience for Insomniac, and they learned a lot through that as well. As far as the IP itself, we really haven't turned over the files on that one to see what that actually means, to be honest. We like what they've been doing in the Spider-Man franchise, and things like Ratchet and Clank are certainly a vital series in the present and future, so that's what we are concentrating on. So this was a really important quote because Shawn Layden is basically just coming out here and letting us know not to really expect anything with Sunset Overdrive, not necessarily permanently, but at least for the time being, and probably, going into the future, in the not too distant future, because they really just want Insomniac Games to focus on the games that PlayStation is already known for. Obviously, Spider-Man, we just know that's a given. We know we're going to get a Spider-Man 2. We know there's just going to be a lot more emphasis placed on Spider-Man going forward now that they are a first-party studio. We know it's going to be bigger and better than ever, compared to anything we've ever seen, honestly, from a Spider-Man game, which is extremely exciting. And I think that that's certainly the first and foremost thing that people would want. Unfortunately, Shawn Layden didn't mention anything about the Resistance series. I've seen a lot of people come out here and say that they should do a Resistance collection, a remaster collection, now that Insomniac is a first-party studio, as kind of like a celebration. And I actually agree with that. I never did get to experience the Resistance games, but it would be really cool to see them do something like that. Maybe they still will. Maybe they'll even do something like that for the PS5. Or maybe they will actually continue the Resistance series in the distant future. We don't know exactly. We do know, though, that Ratchet and Clank apparently is still a very important franchise for Sony, and that actually isn't too surprising because we know that Colin Moriarty has went on record saying that we are not going to be seeing the last of Ratchet and Clank with the most recent PS4 title that a lot of you have been telling me I should play, and I'm actually planning on playing it at some point. I just don't know when exactly. I'm trying to finish up Shadow of the Colossus. I'm currently trying to finish up getting the Platinum for Infamous Second Son, but maybe going forward that's a game we can play maybe to celebrate this recent acquisition news. But either way, I think that fans are going to actually be really happy to hear that Sony has big plans for Ratchet and Clank going forward, because I think that Ratchet and Clank has actually been a pretty substantial franchise for Sony. It just has such a long history, and the most recent game, from what I've heard, was actually really, really good. Even though it was like a movie tie-in, I don't think anybody really paid too much attention to the movie, but I heard the game itself is really, really good, and I think people are going to be happy to know that these are the two main franchises that Insomniac clearly is going to be working on going forward, but I think they're going to do more, if I'm being honest. I think Shawn Layden's kind of just letting us know right now that, yeah, obviously Spider-Man and Ratchet and Clank are very important to Sony and Insomniac as well, but I think that Insomniac being as big of a studio as they are, they're probably going to be doing more. Something that we do need to pay attention to with Insomniac Games as well is that they are a studio that has actually worked on a lot of VR stuff, and they have a lot of experience, I believe, working on VR titles for the Oculus Rift, and now that they are a first-party studio underneath Sony, there's no doubt that anything they do, involving VR going forward is going to be exclusive to PSVR. And there's no doubt as well that Sony's going to put a big emphasis on the second generation version of PlayStation VR. So we have to assume that they're going to want them to do something with the PlayStation VR going forward, and knowing just how many IP they have, and also just, again, how big of a studio they are, it really just makes sense for them to do that. Now, I would be interested to see if they maybe did something with a past IP, such as Resistance, maybe doing something like that with VR, although I think if they did do that, they would have to also offer at least something for the just the base console, right? Like at the very least, like a remaster of the first 3 games like we talked about, or maybe even a new one. But I'm going to be really interested to see, honestly, going into the distant future, if Sony has any plans to do anything at all with the Sunset Overdrive IP. Because again, Shawn Layden, he's made it pretty clear here that they're not really focused on that, but that doesn't mean they're not going to do anything. He didn't outright say, like, we have no plans to do anything at all with Sunset Overdrive. He's being smart. He's keeping it open. He's letting us know that it's something that could eventually happen. And, another big question I've seen a lot of people bring up is, now that Insomniac Games is a first-party studio underneath Sony, can we expect a Sunset Overdrive remaster, or at the very least just for it to be ported? I mean, it wouldn't really make sense to remaster it. It did come out this generation, but like a port, a PlayStation 4 version. And I don't think that can happen, because if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong on this, but if I'm not mistaken, Microsoft doesn't own the Sunset Overdrive IP, but they do own the publishing rights for it. So basically what would have to happen is Sony would have to go through Microsoft and get the green light from them, and also probably pay them a lot of money as well to get that ported over the PS4. But that could be worth it for them, because I honestly think that a lot of PlayStation owners would latch on to a game like Sunset Overdrive. And if anything, maybe they wouldn't have to pay too much money to get that done. It could be maybe a good experiment to see if the demand is actually there from PlayStation fans for a potential sequel. Sony could maybe go to Microsoft and say, hey, we want to pay you to allow us to bring this game over to PS4, and then they can see how well it sells, and maybe it'll sell tremendously well, maybe it'll do incredible, and then suddenly they'll be like, you know what, we got a green light, a sequel to this game, and we can make it a PlayStation 5 exclusive. Could you imagine that? To me, that would be insane if at some point next generation we actually see Sunset Overdrive 2 get announced and it's a PS5 exclusive. That would be absolutely insane, but this is stuff that is possible. I'm really excited to see what else Insomniac is going to do, honestly. I mean, obviously, I'm excited for the next Spider-Man game. That's going to be absolutely huge, as we've already established. I'm going to be excited to see just how much further they want to go with, the Ratchet and Clank series. I'm actually excited to get around to playing the PS4 version soon, hopefully, and I'm really going to be excited to see what it is that Insomniac Games is going to do that goes beyond these 2 games. Again, Shawn Layden's making it clear that these are the 2 things they're really going to be focused on, but something tells me that they're going to do more than that. And, I honestly think that Insomniac Games is just a perfect fit underneath Sony, and I know that a lot of you guys had questions and were wondering, like, does this mean we're going to get Sunset Overdrive on the PS4? Does this mean they're going to start working on Sunset Overdrive 2? Well, you know, it doesn't seem like that's something that's going to happen anytime soon, but we can at least rest assured that they're going to be doubling down on Spider-Man, and apparently they're going to be continuing Ratchet and Clank, which I think the big news out of this is that they're really going to continue on with Ratchet and Clank, and that Sony and Shawn Layden, they see Ratchet and Clank as, you know, as he says here, a vital franchise to PlayStation. So I know that there's a lot of Ratchet and Clank fans that are going to be very happy to hear this news. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for the video, guys. I know I rambled a little bit, but I think that there is definitely a lot to unpack with what Shawn Layden is saying here, and I think it frankly answers a lot of questions that people have had. Hopefully we can see something with Resistance going forward. I'm just adding that here at the end because, you know, thinking about it a little bit more, I know that ever since we got this announcement, that is something I've seen come up a lot. Is a lot of people basically saying, like, we want to see more Resistance, whether it's a remaster collection or something new, and hopefully that happens. But yeah, that does it for the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts about what Shawn Layden has said down in the comments below. I will be interested to see what you guys have to say. Be sure to leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. It really helps it out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.